Well, thank you for that. And, I think that this month's topic is so relevant to the work that we're doing with the FM diversion project. And, I can think of a lot of different scenarios where we're both converging from thought and we're also diverging on leadership and consensus building with the local communities around here, in an effort to provide permanent, reliable flood protection. So I want to start off this morning just talking about some personal stories, I think, from my past to just kind of set the context for my life journey and how I kind of ended up assuming this role. I tell people when I was younger, I just loved to play with water for some reason. And my friends and I would go in our backyard and we would create little cities in our sandbox and with trucks and army men and different people. And then we would end up getting the hose and we'd put the hose in the sandbox and we'd start filling it up. And all the while we would try to be, protecting what we had built until eventually the whole sandbox was flooded and everything was destroyed. I don't know what sort of subconscious, kind of stuck with me from those years as a child. But as I started to grow and looked into a profession, I always felt like I wanted to go into public service and serve the communities that I lived in and worked in. Inevitably, as we all know, in the Fargo-Moorhead area, we're presented with the annual occurrence and risk of a significant flood event. And I don't think it was really realized. We all knew the Red River and other tributaries into the Red River had the potential to flood. And we also had instances like the picture you can see here from 1897, one of the earlier pictures of flooding in Fargo-Moorhead. Folks that built those homes there had no idea, the risk that they were under when they built those. And it wasn't until an event happened that it kind of clicked to say, uh-oh, we have a problem here. We have to find a new way of doing things. However, until about 1970, late 1970s, there really wasn't a good way to determine what that risk was. So we continued to build in the floodplain in Fargo-Moorhead, and we built some of our most important infrastructure in some of the riskiest areas. And it wasn't until 97 until people really kind of quantified what that risk was. And if you were around in 97, you'll remember we had a winter that was just amazing. We had 110 inches of snow. I think it was a record snowfall. And we all knew, what's going to happen when this stuff melts? And, how are we going to deal with the floodwaters as they come up? And so it was really the first taste of our community for emergency flood protection. And we learned quite a bit during that time. But we also realized after 97, something needs to be done. We need to understand the risk that we have. And so we stopped building in the floodplain, and we started to diverge away from our previous lines of thinking about where we develop and how we build structures. And then how do we deal with protecting the community and the structures that are already there and are already built in those risky areas. Another significant thing happened in 97. The city of Grand Forks was devastated by the flooding of the Red River. At the time, it was the largest peacetime evacuation of a municipality within the United States in history. It was absolutely monumental, and the community was completely destroyed. Grand Forks is just now getting back to the population that they had in 97. It's taken them 23 years to get back to where they were. And so it wasn't just the infrastructure, it was the social fabric of the community that was destroyed and disrupted. And we knew after 97, and looking north to our neighbors, we didn't want that to happen here in Fargo-Moorhead. And then, so we began working on flood protection. But then 2009 happened, And I think it reorganized how large of a project or how large of protection infrastructure we needed to deal with in order to really feel comfortable moving forward in the future. And so in 2009, we started to discuss the diversion project itself. And here's just a few photos. I think if you are around during that time, you'll recall, the community looked like a war zone. We had Black Hawk helicopters. We had the Coast Guard here. We were evacuating people from homes. It was really quite a trying time. So the risk exists. We know what it is now. We have the computer models, and we have the data that shows, what our current risk is. And so we really started to focus now on how do we deal with that. And what was developed was the diversion project. And so diverting water out of the main channel of the Red River and bringing it around safely our community, and then converging back north of town. And what that project does is, well, let me put it this way. Flood control projects are difficult because you have a defined quantity of water, and if it's not in our community, it has to go somewhere else. So when we're looking at a flood control project, we're really just moving water from one place to the other. Well, of course, when you move water to another place, you impact somebody else somewhere else. And this project really struggled to deal with minimizing those impacts on other people the best way that we could. The most efficient way we found was to control the water upstream of Fargo-Moorhead behind a dam structure during significant flood events, and then meter that through a diversion channel and the main channel of the Red River. Well, what that did was it impacted people that never assumed they would have those impacts. To the extent where, they have to move. We have to purchase their homes and their family farms. And we have to, take away some of that family history from them. So again, diverging away from what they had anticipated for the greater good, of course, of the metro community. But it's still a very, very difficult situation. And we started to realize we need to put empathy into how we treat people. And the only way to find consensus to build a project such as this is to really just focus in on that human element and talk to each other, communicate. And for about 10 years, there was a lot of consternation about what's going on with this project. How is it impacting the upstream landowners and farmers and the folks that are going to have to move out of their homes? And there was litigation, to the point where it was holding the project back for multiple years. When I came on board about a year and a half ago as the executive director, I said, we just need to get out and we need to start talking to these people. We need to understand their perspective on this project. And, what we're asking of them, we're asking them to disrupt their entire life and to move to a different location so that we can protect a community of 250,000 people. That's a big ask, and we need to go about that extremely carefully. And we need to ensure that we make them whole, for one, and that we accommodate their needs the best that we can. And when we started talking to folks and we started creating programs that would help and assist, at that moment, people started to say, yes, we'll move, but we'd like to see the diversion authority provide insurance products to the farmers and the businesses that operate in the impacted area. And ultimately, we got to a point where the diversion authority went above and beyond what was required under regulatory rules and governmental laws. And we created unique, innovative programs that address the needs of the folks that were impacted from the project. So much significantly to looking to the future and future economic development possibilities for impacted communities upstream, and providing the resources necessary to establish those programs to focus on housing and growth and economic development in the impacted area. Ultimately, we were able to get a settlement agreement, and now we're moving forward with construction. We anticipate signing a $1.2 billion deal to start construction on the diversion channel as early as this fall. So it's an exciting time. The prospects of permanent, reliable flood protection are here, and we're going to start building a massive project. So then it gets me to thinking, okay, we're going to build all this infrastructure. Where are the people going to come from to build this? And where's the materials going to come from to build this? This is unlike anything that we've been faced with before. Ultimately, the whole program is a $3 billion program. Typically, you might see the baseline construction, maybe a couple $100 million around the Fargo-Moorhead community in a typical summer. So we're magnifying that by 10. And so, it begs to the question, where are these people going to come from to build this, and where are we going to get all the materials to do that? And it really is a big issue, and I've been talking with a number of local community groups and industry groups. We're estimating 7,700 jobs will be created with the construction of this project. Similar to the construction of the Hoover Dam, if you put it into perspective. And so it's going to disrupt our community because we're going to see people coming in here. And with the contract that we're letting, the responsibility is on the contractor to provide that workforce. So of course they're going to look locally the best they can. But I already know locally with the baseline work, our local contractors and engineers are already at capacity on an annual basis. So what does that mean? I guess what I'm getting at here is we're going to have another potentially 7,000 people coming into our community within the next year to 2 years. And that's a great thing. It gives us the opportunity to highlight the great place that we live here in Fargo-Moorhead and show them the wonderful community that we have in hopes that maybe they'll establish a life here and stay here. So I think it's some of those things that you think about that are maybe unrelated to flood control, but how can we leverage this project to maximize all sorts of other social areas for the benefit long-term of our community? Those are unique questions that we struggle with every day. So this is not just about building infrastructure. This is about the impact of that infrastructure on people. And it's about leveraging what we're doing for the benefit of our community. Ultimately, I think back, it's kind of like just a bigger sandbox that I'm playing in now. But this time, I'm not going to allow the floodwaters to destroy everything within the sandbox. But it's also looking at all different aspects of this program. So the diversion and divergent, truly kind of, there's all sorts of different angles on this project that you could look at and say, we're diverging from thought. We have a large problem in front of us. How do we solve that problem? There's no book I can pull off the shelf that says this is how you build a diversion project. We have a unique project. It's one of a kind. And there's not another one like it in the nation. I want to take some time to acknowledge also the way that we've gotten to the point that we're at today. A typical project like this would take 20 years to build, if you're lucky. And we're going to be doing it in about 6 years. So, how did we get to that point? Well, it was through innovation and really challenging the regulatory environment, challenging how flood control projects are put into place, and asking questions along the way to say, well, do we have to do it the way we've always done it? Do we have to build this through traditional means and methods? Or can we look at figuring out a different way to more effectively and more efficiently and more cost effectively do this, and maybe with less of an impact on people? And so we did that, and we focused on what's referred to as a public-private partnership. And that is going to really transfer a lot of risk over to a private entity who's going to build the diversion channel, but it also puts that schedule constraint on to ensure that we're able to build the project in that amount of time. But that's only possible because the people of Fargo-Moorhead elected to ultimately tax themselves to fund a project of this magnitude. Because it was either do that or move out of the community and find someplace else. And I think people that live here just love this community so much that that wasn't even an option. The only other option is let's figure out a solution, let's implement that solution as quick as possible, and let's really challenge traditional culture and the traditional environment to look at how we implement these things in a different way. So happy to say we're moving forward. Things are going great. This is going to be an exciting year for us. We're really turning the corner into full-scale construction, and certainly looking to tackle all of these other social and economic and environmental issues that surround the diversion project on a day-to-day basis to find those great solutions moving forward. So thank you so much for allowing me to come and share a few thoughts, and I certainly look forward to answering any questions and engaging in a Q&A session with you.